Okay, very well. My name is Jeffrey A. Herman. The reason I say it that way is because that's the way it's going to be on the ballot. The way that it is on the ballot is the way that you sign your voter registration card. So I'd have to register again if I wanted to change that. That's no problem. I come here from Central America. Yo viví 16 años en Costa Rica antes de llegar aquí. I was born in California, went to the University of California, Santa Barbara, graduated, got a job with the United Nations, traveled around the world. I was around the world maybe 5 or 6, 7 times, depending on how you count, going around the world. By the time I was 32, I settled in Costa Rica. I worked in the refugee camps for 9 years. And then when the wars ended, due to the diligent work of our Nobel Prize winning president, Oscar Arias, Sorry, another Costa Rican here. I was given a job doing policy analysis, which was putting the world's problems in order of priority. I did that for about 6 or 7 years. Very interesting work. Huge problems, the disparity of wealth between the developed world and the underdeveloped world, ecological problems, global warming, wars. There's 185 wars going on in the world right now. All of them are within countries except for one. There's only one country in this world that is invading another country. Guess who? Anyway, so my kids, they grew up. They were 12 and 13 years old. They asked me to bring them to the United States. My wife agreed. I was outvoted 3-1. So we packed up our bags, ended up in Boston because the colleges here are something to behold, and they've done very well. You've probably seen my daughter on television. She went to the Boston Arts Academy. She's done commercials for McDonald's, Target, with Christina Aguilera, Allstate commercial. Anyway, she's doing very well. She went to the Boston Arts Academy. I'm very, very, very happy that there was that school in Boston. I worked 11 years here in Boston as a teacher, 3 times as a permanent teacher, and then in between those times as a substitute teacher because at one point they laid off 500 teachers. Anyway, another minute?
Yeah, just sort of wrap up or figure 2. So
okay, so in the year 2002, I've been here for 6 years. I saw people campaigning for Jeffrey Sanchez. I knew Liz Malia. She was my representative before. All of a sudden, there was an open seat in my district where I vote, and Jeff Sanchez won. I went to his office a few times to express concerns about one thing or another, and I didn't think his responses were very good. And then on March the 16th, when he voted to kill a bill that would have legalized medicinal marijuana in the state, I got an email from the organization MassCan, which was responsible for decriminalizing marijuana in the state, asking me to run against him, and I answered with 2 letters, okay. So anyway, since then I've been doing my paperwork, 20 pages of forms, etc., and I'm running for state rep. Any questions?
Got a bunch of them. So the first round of questions will be based on answers to your questionnaire. Some point Ruben will have some audience questions. The first question we've asked everyone is about the budget. I'm sure you're aware we're facing a really serious situation next year. And some analysts are predicting a gap of up to $2 billion. In your answer, you noted that before we raise taxes, we need to reduce expenditures. You also suggested freezing salaries and laying off workers. Much of what
I didn't say laying off workers.
you said it was something that we should consider. Hold on, sorry. Play your question. I don't want to misrepresent.
We've already laid off workers, but freezing salaries and pensions. That's what I said.
Okay, hold on. I want to make sure I'm not going to say. Private businesses do this when they're downturn and they let some workers. So you're not suggesting that's not workers.
No.
Okay, great. I apologize for that. Okay, well, anyway, no laying off workers. Our question is simple. If you're not willing to raise taxes, where are you going to find the $2 billion?
Well, I was in a debate in Brookline a couple of weeks ago with Jeff Sanchez, and he was talking about how they cut all the fat from the budget as much as they could, and they did a real good job of that. And I gave an example. I was working 1 year for the Department of Social Services, taking care of foster children. And one of the foster children that was under my responsibility, he was because he'd kicked a teacher. He was 14 years old. He was selling crack cocaine. They put him in a prison in Dorchester. You have to go through 2 steel doors to get in. There's a bunch of other kids that are terribly behaved like him. And he had to go to the psychologist twice a week to be psychoanalyzed. And the psychologist told him that he wasn't going to get out of there until he admitted having raped his sister. And he said, what? I mean, I've done a lot of terrible things, but I didn't do that. She said, well, you're not getting out until you admit it. For 2 years, he wouldn't admit it. Finally, he was desperate. He said, yes, okay, I raped my sister. She said, now you're not getting out. And the point that I was making was, this is just one example, but this psychologist needs a caseload of so many children, and if she doesn't have that kind of caseload, she's either going to go part-time or get laid off herself. So she was doing that. And if you look at a budget and see that this psychologist is making $72,000 a year, she's got a caseload of 30, you're going to say, well, it sounds pretty good. I mean, what can you do about that? Well, I have hands-on experience. I have been, there's nothing better than, I suggested at the same debate with Jeff Sanchez that every legislator should be a substitute teacher for a week every year. That they should take the MCAS test. A lot of people agree with me. But anyway, the point is that I have a lot of hands-on experience with how the system works, and
Or doesn't.
or doesn't work. And I think that we can look at things like the 30,000 children that we have in foster care in the state that are costing about $35,000 each, and see a lot of it. It's been described to me like a black hole, like an event horizon. You get into foster care, it's hard to get out. I recommended children going back, and I was denied because my supervisor said, we need a caseload.
Right.
We have to have people.
I want to focus you a little bit on the question at hand, though, which is, where are you going to find $2 billion?
The answer is exactly what Sonia Chang Diaz was saying. A little bit here, a little bit there. It's difficult. I was talking to a consultant about it. How are you going to... I found out that the social workers were in favor of keeping the children because they need a caseload, and they learn that they're going to get fired if they try to get the kids back home as early as possible. So it's exactly the same answer that Sonia has. In fact, I could swear right now that I have the same answers that Sonia has, and I was even here the whole time. But believe me this, I do not know the legislature like people that are incumbents that have been in it. I'm a newcomer. But I want to stand on my past record of what I have done and not answer questions theoretically of what I would do in the future, because anybody could answer those questions as politically correct as they can imagine, whether they believe it or not. You understand?
Some people tend to find that what's politically correct for one group is politically incorrect for another group. So
that's right.
that's why we ask people to take stands on issues so we have a sense of where your values are.
Well, I'm very different.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. This is about minimum wage. In response to a question about raising the minimum wage, you responded that not every job deserves to pay enough to support a family.
That's right.
We wanted to get a chance to have you elaborate on that further. Many would argue in the city that a minimum wage job doesn't actually pay enough to support one person, much less a family. A lot of people working 2 or 3 jobs in cities expensive in Boston. So to rephrase that, do you believe every job should pay at least enough to support one person? And follow up, what do you think a fair minimum wage is?
Okay. I do not believe that a minimum wage should be enough to support one person, because there are some jobs that a student might get during the summer, cleaning up a park, some kind of... I was in charge of the caddy program at Franklin Park once, and I had about 30 students, and they were making $6.25 an hour, below minimum wage. But it was a summer job that that 30 students wouldn't have gotten if they were making $8.50 an hour. There might have been 20 students getting. But yes, I believe we have to be competitive. We should, I think too often we need a progressive tax structure so that people that are making over $150,000 a year pay a lot more than people making under $30,000. But I believe that it's a fantasy thinking that we can start saying, oh, why don't we pay everybody $100 an hour and let them retire in 2 years. Everybody would be so happy, we'd have enough money to be able to buy anything we wanted. It wouldn't work that way. I think we're competing for scarce resources now. I am in favor of the people that are making less money making substantially more. By substantially, I mean minimum wage or more, yes. But I tell you, I'd like a lot of these unions to own the companies that they're unions in and see what kind of wages they can afford to pay their workers under competitive circumstances.
I think we both agree that $100 an hour is probably a bit high for a minimum wage. Is there a level that you would think would be fair for the minimum wage, or is it the current minimum wage?
I'd say the current minimum wage is fine.